Robbery Bob, not to be mistaken with Bob the Robber, is a perfect example of when mobile games were fun. The early 2010s was the golden era of mobile gaming, when many studios were doing their best to create something unique, unlike the modern era where everyone just cares about the money. Robbery Bob Man of Steel was developed by a Swedish studio named Level 8 Games, and it was released in May of 2012. Level 8 was a studio that actually cared about what they put out, and didn't feed you slop just because it would make them money. The studio was founded in 2011 and consisted of just 15 people. They also had a YouTube channel where they would actively upload devlogs, behind the scenes, and even music videos. These music videos are what caught my attention the most because they are some nice shit.
Shh, we're sneaking. We're sneaking.
But in 2021, Level 8 sold the Robbery Bob franchise to Decca, and shortly after, the studio was shut down, leaving their most anticipated game, which was Robbery Bob the Sneakwall, in a limbo state. Robbery Bob 1 starts with a comic book style cutscene of Bob spending his time in prison. How long has he been there? A grand total of 10 days. But then someone gives him a file to break him out of his top security prison. After he's out, he meets his savior, which is this guy. And to return the favor, Bob has to legally acquire some stuff for him. This is the story of chapter 1, and the story of this game is always told through different chapters with the same comic book strips and also in dialogues between Bob and the other character. Level 1 is just you walking to a cube and taking the loot. Sam said he was testing us, but on what exactly? Walking? And as you can see, this game is top down. As Bob, you can sneak around, run, and take these shiny stuff, which are the loot. Pretty simple mechanics, but when you mix them together and add even more things, it becomes quite a hellhole. Every level has 3 goals. The first one is being unnoticed by the NPCs, the second is beating the level within a time limit, and the third one is collecting all the loot. Each level has one big loot which is required to finish the level, but there are also a lot of optional loot scattered across each level. And by loot, I don't necessarily mean anything valuable. Throughout this game, you will be putting your life in danger just to steal some smelly socks and a rotten banana. Though they do say, one man's trash is another one's treasure. Anyways, there are many layers of depth to the gameplay. For example, if you sneak through doors, you open them quietly. But if you run through them, they will make a loud noise that makes NPCs notice you. Speaking of NPCs, we have the cops and the residents. They all follow a certain path which is shown to you at all times or are just standing still. And they don't really change their path unless you leave doors open or make noise. Which is a strategy that you can use to your advantage, like messing with this idiot here. In the first chapter, avoiding NPCs is pretty easy, but even if one atom of you gets in their line of sight, the residents just call the cops, not including Granny that beats you up, and the cops will arrest you. If they catch you, that is. Besides human NPCs, we also have dogs, and there are 2 dogs in the series. Dog named Princess Cupcake and dog named Terminator 2000. If Princess Cupcake ever sees you, she will try to annihilate you, but she's usually on a leash, so you can just not get in her range or make her get stuck in places. Terminator 2000, however, likes you and will make noise if you get close. And the way you get rid of him is by just leaving the area. There is also a level up system in this game, and it's actually very easy to level up. Another way of spending your hard-earned V-Bucks is buying swaggers. This game has quite a few skins, and most of them have special traits, like the ninja outfit that makes you completely silent and even running through doors won't make any noise. Or if you're wearing the bunny suit, the NPCs will just laugh at you. Super Bob is my personal favorite, that makes you have a long-ass dash. Oh, was it a plane? Was it a bird? It's actually... After a few levels, you eventually reach a level called the setup. And as the name suggests, Sam has set us up and is hoping that we get caught in this heist. Bob, however, is cracked at Marvel Rivals and does not get caught. And in order to get revenge, in the next level, we go to Sam's house and start to take everything back from him. Sam himself is here too, but he's a freaky NPC. He doesn't follow a set path and instead he randomly searches everywhere until he finds you. The big loot in this level is right in front of you, but taking it is not a good idea, because if you do... The big loot is Bob calling the cops on Sam. So first, you need to get all the smaller loot and in the end, get the big one. Chapter 1 ends with Sam getting arrested and Bob walking away with all the loot. Chapter 2 starts with Bob walking down the street when he bumps into... This accidental bump makes Biff drop his ice cream, which makes him really mad. So now he's forcing you to rob houses for an ice cream. Why didn't Bob just buy him another ice cream? I don't know, he probably didn't get his YouTube paycheck or something. This chapter is where things get fun, because we now have security cameras. If you enter a camera's range, an alarm goes off and the nearby cops will know your location. But as we learned in physics, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And to counter the cameras, you get the disguise machine that allows you to freely walk in front of cameras and NPCs without getting picked up as enemy forces. The downside, however, is that you can no longer run or steal loot. Doing those will blow your disguise. By the end of chapter 2, Bob decides to take revenge on Biff, and we also see that his apartment is being raided by cops. Now, unlike the first boss fight, Biff isn't here at first, but when you pick up his watch, he comes in and starts beating the cops. In this first phase, he isn't hostile towards you, but when all the cops are taken out or when you pick up the big loot, it's your turn. The strategy here is to let him take out most of the cops, which makes things easier for you, and then take the big loot and run. The next chapter starts with Bob finally being free and is now using the money he stole from his previous employers to go on vacation, but he is immediately dragged into another robbery situation. This time, Bob ends up in a secret government laboratory where he meets Dr. Thievius, an intern working there who wants Bob to steal parts for a super secret invention that nobody else in the lab approves of. Unlike the other employers, Thievius doesn't really control Bob in these levels. He's not like threatening him or anything, and the only thing keeping Bob around is the fact that he doesn't know where the exit is. And Thievius promised him freedom once the device is finished. Gameplay wise, this chapter also introduces a couple new mechanics. The first one being lasers. There are green and yellow lasers that work on timers, while the red and blue lasers need to be disabled using pressure plates. The second new mechanic here is teleporters. You step on one and you move to the other side. There are also new NPCs here, which are the scientists. They will chase and shock you when they see you. In one of the levels, we are tasked with stealing a chocolate bar. And in that same level, we find a secret exit, which is very conveniently marked by a giant sign on the floor. Now you may think it's a trap, I mean, who leaves this big ass sign here? But surprisingly, it's not. So Bob starts escaping and Thievius starts panicking because he just lost all of his power over Bob. In the next levels, Bob manages to find the exit and also destroys the lab in doing so. And that's basically how the first Robbery Bob ends. Now there are more chapters in this game, but they don't have a story. And they are weird. Don't get me wrong, they do look cool visually and they focus more on the problem solving, but they're just extra. Which is something that cannot be said about the next installment. Robbery Bob 2 Double Trouble was released in June of 2015 and starts with Bob finally living as a free man, but that lasts about 10 seconds. The moment he hears a cop nearby, he panics, runs through a hedge and accidentally ruins a couple's wedding cake. And while trying to run away, he gets caught by the bride's father, who also happens to be a mob boss. How you doing? And since threatening Bob into stealing things is a tradition in the series, we are back to robbing houses again. One thing you notice immediately if you play this game right after the first one is how different Bob feels. Because there is no upgrading system here, and by the end of the first game, your Bob would technically be maxed out, and you would be grabbing loot through walls. But here, you are playing as a completely different Bob, who is not as OP as the first one. A new mechanic introduced early on is NPC-only doors, and the only way Bob can use them is by sneaking behind someone. One of the best moments in this chapter is Bob bringing the mafia boss a police hat as a gift, not as a joke because he misunderstood the assignment. Mr. Cannelloni said that it's tradition for the bride to wear something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue on her wedding day. For something old, Bob stole some underpants. For something new, he stole a bow tie. For something borrowed, he stole a black dress. And for something blue, he decided that stealing a police cap was the logical thing to do. Some new mechanics here were heavy doors that you have to push to open, movable objects, NPCs carrying items like keys, and very questionable interior designs. The next chapter, called Shamville, is a fake town created by Dr. Thievius as part of his mind control plan. In this chapter, we meet Nikki Heist, a woman who is a self-certified private investigator. So essentially, she's unemployed and does not have a job. Bob, however, being the virgin that he is, decides to help her find out what Thievius is actually doing. Or should I say, breaking into houses and labs again. The big reveal here is that everything around them is fake. The whole town is just one big lab disguised as a town, to not attract any suspicion. This chapter introduces one of the cooler mechanics in this game. Control pads that let you take over dogs. Other NPCs don't suspect dogs, and you can use them to distract guards and get them out of your way, or activate pressure plates. This chapter was probably the hardest one for me to beat, because chapter 1 was pretty similar to what we had in the first game. But now, they just throw new mechanics at you every 2 levels, and there really isn't a linear way of trying to figure things out. There are hidden doors in some levels, and you gotta start changing your entire thought process. Anyways, after 20 painful levels, Bob destroys Thievius' lab once more and gets him arrested. But before being taken away, Thievius transfers his mind into one of his cats. The game never elaborated further on this. The next chapter is where shit gets weird. Bob goes fishing, accidentally catches a guy instead of a fish. That guy happens to be a crazy conspiracy theorist, and he brainwashes Bob into helping him build an anti-alien device. Now, one thing I hate about this chapter is bugged security cameras that cover areas where they shouldn't be covering. And even though it's just a visual thing, it's also present in the next chapters and is very confusing. The only new mechanic introduced here is a floating robot that detects your DNA and starts following you if you walk in its path. And it also very cleanly stuns and then vaporizes you or any NPC on site.
How to say? I'm gonna touch you in Chinese.
In the end, the device actually works and it creates a force field around the Earth, only for it to be vaporized by Eve. The cutscene is broken, by the way. After that, we have the ski chapter, where Bob accidentally wins a skiing competition and ends up meeting someone called Conrad. Now, this Conrad guy is very much a phony and a loser who likes to sabotage his opponents through inconvenient ways like with a stink bomb, and he basically bullies Bob into stealing things for him. Most of the gameplay is the same here, except for the addition of Kanye West. You can use goats to destroy different parts of the map or use them to get rid of guards. And by the end of this chapter, Bob challenges Conrad to a race, and since Bob is also cracked at Fortnite, he wins. Then we have the Halloween chapter. We see Bob go trick-or-treating with Cassie, a character that, unlike others, actually seems to know Bob and they also seem related. Is she his sister or is she his child? I don't know, the game never properly introduces her. But she is in the same asset file as Nikki Heist, so perhaps. This chapter adds a lot of new mechanics. The big loot can now move around and has to be trapped in some kind of corner before you can steal it, and you cannot outrun it. There are ghost NPCs that can phase through walls while chasing you, but if you stare at them directly, they stop moving. You can also trap them in these Ghostbuster machines to power certain devices or use them to get rid of guards. The problem, however, is that the difficulty here is insane, to a point where acing levels becomes pointless. The ending itself is also kind of underwhelming. You clear the haunted areas and get rewarded with a bag of candy from the mayor. which is just another ending like any other. And that's also where Robbery Bob 2 ends. The series doesn't really have an ending, it ends like a show that never got its final episode, and that's what saddens me. As I said, in 2021, Level 8 was shut down, and before everything collapsed, they were working on the next game in the series, which was Robbery Bob the Sneakquel, or Burgle Buddies. And this time, the idea was bigger. This game was gonna have an actual 3D environment, there could have been multiplayer, and it was gonna have a more modern look. But around the same time, the rights to the Robbery Bob franchise was sold to DeCa, a company who is known for publishing indie games and developing some not so great games on the side. DeCa did say that they will continue working on the Sneakquel, but it's been a long time since we got the last update, so yeah, it's not happening. After DeCa took over, nothing really happened and the franchise just kinda sat there. Not dead, just abandoned. Which is exactly the same fate as Zombie Catchers.
Cloud 9.